that was falling apart. Fire and smoke filled the cabin as Sergeant held onto his seat with all his strength. Around him, his squad members were screaming. The enemy weapons had torn through their ship like paper. "Hold on," the pilot shouted, but knew it was already too late. The ship hit the frozen ground of 4 with a terrible crash. Metal twisted and broke. Glass shattered into 1,000 pieces. Felt his body slam against something hard, and then everything went black. When he opened his eyes, he was alone. The cold hit him first. It was the kind of cold that went straight through his armor and into his bones, pushed himself up slowly, his whole body screaming with pain. Blood ran down the side of his face from a cut on his head. He looked around the destroyed cabin. His squad members were dead, all 7 of them. Some had died in the crash. Others had been killed by the enemy fire before they even hit the ground. Checked each one, hopping to find someone alive, but there was no one. He was the only survivor. The war between humanity and the Empire had been going on for 11 years, had been fighting for 6 of those years. He had seen friends die. He had watched colony worlds burn. His own brother had been killed at the siege of 3 years ago. They showed no mercy to humans, and humans showed no mercy in return. Now, stranded on this frozen moon with no way to call for help, was sure he would die here too. He gathered what supplies he could find in the wreckage. Some food packs, a thermal blanket, his rifle, though it had only half a charge left. His suit's power cells were damaged, giving him maybe a week of warmth before they failed completely. The ice moon of 4 was a dead world. Temperatures dropped to -100 at night. Storms could appear without warning and freeze a man solid in minutes. No one lived here. No one was supposed to be here. Started walking. He did not know where he was going. He just knew that staying with the wreckage meant death. He walked for hours through the white wasteland. The wind cut at his face like knives. His legs grew heavy and tired. More than once he thought about just sitting down and letting the cold take him. It would be easier than fighting. But was not the kind of man who gave up easily. As the pale sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, he saw something in the distance. A shape, metal reflecting the dying light. Another ship. Moved faster now, hope giving him new energy. Maybe there would be supplies. Maybe there would be a working radio. Maybe he could survive this after all. As he got closer, his heart sank. The ship was. It was a transport vessel, smaller than his but still badly damaged. One of its wings had been torn off completely. Smoke still rose from several holes in its body. It must have been shot down in the same battle that killed his squad. Raised his rifle and approached carefully. They were the enemy. If anyone inside was still alive, they would try to kill him on sight. The main door of the ship had been blown open by the crash. Stepped inside, his weapon ready, his eyes scanning every shadow. The first body he found was a soldier. Male, based on the broader shoulders and darker blue skin. He had died from wounds taken before the crash. Stepped over him and moved deeper into the ship. He found 2 more dead soldiers in the next room, then a 4th near what looked like a command station. All of them were beyond help. Was about to leave when he heard something. A small sound, a whimper like a frightened animal. He followed the noise to the back of the ship, to a room that had partly collapsed. There, hidden under a pile of emergency blankets, he found them. A woman lay on the floor. She was badly hurt. Blue blood pooled around her body and her breathing was weak and shallow. Her silver eyes looked up with a mixture of fear and something else, something desperate. Next to her, pressed against her side, was a child. Froze. The little girl could not have been more than 5 years old by human standards. Her skin was pale blue, almost white. She had 4 thin arms, 2 on each side, which was normal for young. Her eyes were the same silver as her mother's, but they were wide with terror as she stared at the human soldier pointing a weapon at them. The mother spoke. Her voice was weak, barely a whisper. Translator, built into his helmet, struggled with the words for a moment before giving him the meaning. "Please," she said, "not my daughter, please." Lowered his rifle slowly. He did not know what to do. These were enemies. They had killed billions of humans. They had glassed 3 colony worlds, turning them into dead rocks floating in space. They had killed his brother. But this was a dying mother and a scared child. The woman seemed to understand that he was not going to shoot. She reached out with one trembling hand and touched his boot. The effort cost her greatly. More blood spilled from her wounds. "Protect her," she said. The words came out broken, desperate. "Please, she is everything, protect my." Then her hand fell. Her silver eyes went dark, and the mother died there on the cold metal floor of her ruined ship. The child screamed. It was a terrible sound, a sound of pure grief and fear. She threw herself over her mother's body, her 4 small arms wrapping around the still form, and she cried in a language Translator could not fully process. He stood there watching, not knowing what to do. Every part of his training told him to leave. The child she would grow up to be an enemy. If he left her here, she would die from the cold within hours, and there would be one less enemy in the universe. But she was just a child. Thought about his niece back on Earth. She was about the same age. He thought about what he would want someone to do if she was alone and afraid, and her mother had just died in front of her. He put his rifle on his back and knelt down slowly. "Hey," he said softly, "hey, little one." Looked up at him with those silver eyes. Tears ran down her blue cheeks. She was shaking with fear and cold and grief. "I am not going to hurt you," said. He did not know if his translator could make her understand, but he tried anyway. "I know I am scary. I know I am the enemy, but I am not going to hurt you." She did not believe him. Of course she did not believe him. Her people called humans the burning ones because of the weapons they used. She had probably been taught since birth that humans were monsters. Reached into his pack and pulled out a food bar. He unwrapped it slowly, making sure she could see what he was doing, and held it out to her. "Are you hungry?" he asked. Stared at the food. Then she stared at him, then back at the food. Her stomach made a small sound. Very slowly, like a frightened animal, she reached out with one of her small hands and took the food bar. She sniffed it first, checking for danger, then took a tiny bite. It was a start. Stood up and looked around the ruined ship. He could not stay here with the bodies. It was not safe, and it was not good for the child to stay with her dead mother. "We have to go," he said. "We have to find shelter, do you understand?" Did not answer. She just kept eating the food bar, her eyes never leaving him. Sighed, he gathered what supplies he could find on the ship. More food, more thermal blankets, a medical kit that he hoped would work on a child. Then he turned back to. "Come on," he said, holding out his hand. "We need to move." She did not take his hand, but when he started walking, she followed. Outside, the temperature was dropping fast. Night was coming, and with it, the deadly cold of 4. Found a small cave in a nearby ice formation. It was not much, but it would protect them from the wind. He set up the thermal blankets to create a small shelter. He gave most of them, keeping only one for himself. She was smaller. She would feel the cold more. As the darkness fell and the wind began to howl outside, sat at the entrance of the cave, his rifle in his hands, keeping watch. Behind him, he could hear the child crying softly for her mother. He did not know why he was doing this. He did not know if he was making a mistake. All he knew was that he had made a choice, and now he had to live with it. Human soldier, enemy of the Empire, had become the protector of a child. And somehow he had to keep them both alive. The first week was the hardest. Would not come near. She stayed as far from him as possible in their small ice cave, pressing herself against the frozen wall, her silver eyes watching his every move. Whenever he tried to get close, she would make a hissing sound, her 4 small arms raised in a defensive posture. She expected him to hurt her. Every moment she waited for the attack that never came. Understood. He was patient. He left food for her at a safe distance and then moved away so she could take it. He made sure she had the warmest blankets. He checked on her when she slept, making sure she was still breathing in the terrible cold. On the 3rd day, a storm came. The wind screamed outside their cave like a living thing. Snow and ice flew through the air so thick that could not see his own hand in front of his face. The temperature dropped so low that ice began to form on the inside of his helmet. Was shaking violently. Her thin body was not made for this kind of cold. They came from warm worlds with purple skies and gentle suns. This frozen hell was killing her slowly. Did the only thing he could. He crawled over to her, ignoring her frightened hisses, and wrapped his body around hers. He used his own warmth to keep her alive. She fought him at first. She pushed against his chest with all 4 of her arms, making sounds of fear and anger. But he did not let go. He held her gently but firmly, sharing the heat of his body. "It is okay," he said softly again and again. "I am not going to hurt you. It is okay. I just want to keep you warm." After a while, she stopped fighting. She was too cold, too tired, too weak. She pressed her face against his chest and cried and held her until the storm passed. Something changed after that night. Still watched him carefully, but the fear in her eyes began to fade. She no longer hissed when he approached. She started taking food directly from his hand instead of waiting for him to leave it on the ground. On the 5th day, she spoke to him for the first time. "Do," she said, struggling with the sounds of his name. Her translator was broken, so she had to use her own voice, her own limited understanding of his language. He looked at her in surprise. "Yes." She pointed at herself, then she pointed at him. "Do." He smiled. It was the first time he had smiled in weeks. "That is right, I am you are." She nodded seriously, as if they had just completed an important agreement. After that, she followed him everywhere. Their days fell into a pattern. In the morning, would check the weather outside the cave. If it was safe, they would go out to search for supplies. The ship was only a short walk away, and there was still useful things inside. Food packs, medical supplies, pieces of metal that used to improve their shelter. Helped as much as she could. Her 4 arms were surprisingly strong for such a small child. She carried things that pointed at. She watched and learned as he worked to make their cave more comfortable. In the afternoon, when the temperature dropped too low to go outside, they stayed in the cave, would tell her stories. He told her about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests, about the tall mountains where snow covered the peaks all year round. He told her about the city where he grew up with its busy streets and bright lights. He told her about his family. His mother, who made the best food in the whole neighborhood. His father, who worked as an engineer and could fix anything. His sister, who was smart and funny and probably worried sick about him right now. His niece, who was about the same age as and loved to draw pictures. Listened to every word with wide eyes. Sometimes she did not understand, but she listened anyway. And slowly, she started to share things too. She drew pictures in the frost on the cave walls. Her home world with its purple sky and 3 moons. Her house, which was big and had many rooms. Her mother, who was beautiful and important and made feel safe. She drew her father too, a tall figure with dark blue skin and a serious face. His translator managed to catch a few of her words as she pointed at the picture. "Father," she said, "big soldier, very strong." Felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. His father was a military commander. That meant was not just any child. She was someone important, someone whose death would be noticed. He pushed the thought away. It did not matter. He had made his choice. The 2nd week was easier than the first. His fear was almost gone now. She sat close to during the cold nights, no longer needing to be held but choosing to stay near him for warmth and comfort. She tried to learn his language, repeating words after him with her lilting voice. "Sky," he would say, pointing up. "I," she would repeat, her pronunciation strange but understandable. "Cold. Calda. Friend." She paused at that one. She looked at him for a long moment, her silver eyes searching his face. Then very softly she said the word. "Friend." Felt something tight in his chest. He nodded. "Yes, friend." She smiled. It was the first time he had seen her smile since he found her. It changed her whole face, made her look like what she really was, just a child. Just a little girl who had lost everything and was trying to find something to hold on to. On the 10th day, got sick. It started with a cough, then a fever. Her pale blue skin became even paler, almost white, and she shook with chills that had nothing to do with the cold outside. She could not eat. She could barely drink. Was terrified. He did not know how bodies worked. He did not know what medicines to give her, what foods would help, what would make things worse. The medical kit from her ship was useless because he could not read the instructions. He did the only things he could. He kept her warm. He gave her water, drop by drop. He held her hand with all four of her arms wrapped around his one, and he talked to her through the long nights. "You have to fight," he told her. "You have to be strong. Your mother asked me to protect you, and I am trying, but you have to help me. You have to fight." For 3 days, hovered between life and death. Did not sleep. He watched over her every moment, adjusting her blankets, cooling her forehead when the fever burned too hot, warming her when the chills took over. On the morning of the 14th day, her fever broke. Opened her eyes and looked at him. She was weak, thin, exhausted, but she was alive. "Doe," she whispered. He let out a breath he felt like he had been holding for days. "I am here. I am right here." She reached up with one small hand and touched his face. It was the first time she had touched him willingly, not for warmth, not for comfort, but just to touch him. "Good human," she said in her broken version of his language. "My doe, good." Laughed. It came out shaky, mixed with something that might have been a sob. "Thank you, little one, you scared me. Do not do that again." She smiled weakly, hungry. He gave her food, and she ate slowly but steadily. By the end of the day, she was sitting up. By the next day, she was walking around the cave, still weak but getting stronger. The 3rd week passed faster than the others, recovered fully, and with her recovery came a new energy. She talked constantly, mixing her own language with the human words she had learned. She asked questions about everything. Why was the sky white here? Why was it so cold? What did humans eat on their home world? Did all humans have only 2 arms? Answered as best he could. He found himself enjoying her company. She was curious and clever and surprisingly funny for a child who had been through so much. She made him laugh for the first time in months. On the 18th day, they saw the lights in the sky. A ship coming down through the atmosphere, landing somewhere to the north. His heart beat fast. Was it human? Would they be rescued or captured or killed? "Stay here," he told. "I will go see." But she shook her head. All 4 of her arms grabbed his hand. "No, together, we go together." He looked at her small face, at the determination in her silver eyes. She had lost everyone else. She was not going to let him go alone. "Okay," he said, "together." They walked through the snow toward the landing site. It took hours, and the cold bit at them every step of the way. But they kept moving, hand in hand, the human soldier and the child. When they finally saw the ship, his heart sank. It was a patrol vessel, sleek and dark against the white snow. Soldiers were coming out, spreading across the area, searching for something, or someone. Made a sound of joy. "Home," she cried, "my people." She started to run toward them, but grabbed her arm. "Wait," he said, "wait, they will kill me." She stopped. She looked at him, then at the soldiers, then back at him. Understanding dawned in her eyes. He was the enemy. Her people would not see the man who had saved her. They would only see a human soldier to be destroyed. His face became very serious. She stood up straight, as tall as her small body could manage. Then she grabbed his hand with all four of her arms and started walking toward the soldiers. "No," said, trying to pull back. "No, you do not understand." But she did not let go. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "You are mine," she said firmly. "They will not hurt what is mine." Before could argue more, the soldiers saw them. Weapons were raised. Commands were shouted. In seconds, they were surrounded by warriors, all pointing their guns at the human. Stepped in front of her, four arms spread wide. "No," she shouted in her own language, words that's broken translator could barely process. "He saved me. He is mine. You cannot hurt him." The soldiers hesitated. They looked at each other in confusion. A human protecting a child protecting a human. It made no sense. But they lowered their weapons and realized that his fate was no longer in his own hands. It belonged to a 5-year-old girl with silver eyes and 4 arms, and a will stronger than anyone he had ever met. The journey to Prime took 6 days. Spent most of it in a small cell on the patrol ship. The room was not cruel. There was a bed, water, and food brought to him twice a day. But the door was locked, and armed guards stood outside at all times. He was a prisoner, that much was clear. What was not clear was why he was still alive. Every few hours would come to visit him. The guards tried to stop her at first, but she threw such a fit that they eventually gave up. She would sit outside his cell door, pressing her face against the small window, talking to him about everything and nothing. "We are going home," she told him on the second day. "My home, Prime. You will see the purple sky. You will like it." Smiled at her through the glass. "I am not sure your people will let me see much of anything, little one." Shook her head firmly. "I will not let them hurt you, I promised." She was so certain, so absolutely sure that she could protect him. It broke his heart a little because he knew how the universe really worked. He was a human soldier, an enemy who had killed warriors in battle. His life was worth nothing to these people. But he did not tell her that. He just smiled and thanked her for visiting. On the 4th day, one of the officers came to speak with him. A tall female with dark blue skin and cold eyes. Her translator worked perfectly, turning her words into clear human language. "Do you know who the child is?" she asked. Shook his head. "She told me her name is, that is all I know." The officer studied him for a long moment. "She is of house. Her mother was lady, one of the highest nobles in the empire. Her father was commander, leader of the 3rd Fleet." Felt the blood drain from his face. He had been protecting the daughter of one of the most powerful families in the empire. The daughter of a fleet commander who had probably killed thousands of humans. "The commander is dead," the officer continued. "He died in the crash on 4. Lady is also dead, is the only survivor of house." "I did not know," said quietly. I found a child, a scared child. I could not leave her." The officer tilted her head, studying him like he was some strange creature she had never seen before. "You are human. We are enemies. You should have killed her." "She was just a child," said, and his voice was harder now, angry. "I do not kill children, no matter what flag they fly." Something flickered in the officer's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or something else. She nodded once and left without another word. On the 6th day, the ship landed on Prime. Was taken from his cell and marched through the ship by 6 armed guards. They walked down the landing ramp, and for the first time, he saw the home world. It was beautiful. The sky was purple, just as had said. 3 moons hung low on the horizon, pale and glowing. The buildings around the landing field were made of white stone that seemed to glow with inner light. Plants with golden leaves lined the pathways, swaying in a warm breeze. It was nothing like the frozen hell of 4. It was paradise. Did not have much time to look. The guards pushed him forward through wide streets and past crowds of who stopped and stared. A human on Prime. Most of them had never seen one in person. Their faces showed fear, anger, confusion, curiosity. Some of them shouted things. Translator picked up a few words. Burning one. Monster, kill it. He kept walking. He kept his head up. He would not give them the pleasure of seeing him afraid. They took him to a great building in the center of the city. The High Council chamber, according to the signs his translator could read. The seat of power for the entire empire. Inside, hundreds of filled the viewing galleries. Important figures in fine clothes sat in raised seats. At the center of it all was a half-circle of old with silver and white markings on their skin, the signs of age and wisdom. The council was brought to stand before them, alone, surrounded by enemies. "This is the human," one of the council members said, an ancient male with a voice like grinding stone. "This is the creature that was found with the child of house." "Yes, Elder," one of the guards confirmed. The elder leaned forward. "What should be done with it? It is an enemy soldier. By all rights and laws it should be executed." Voices rose in agreement from the galleries. "Kill it! Execute the monster! Death to the burning one!" Closed his eyes. This was it. This was how he would die. Not on a battlefield, not in the cold of a frozen moon, but here, in the heart of the enemy empire, executed as a prize. He thought of his mother, his father, his sister. He hoped they would never know what happened to him. He hoped they would imagine he died quickly, in battle like a soldier. "Stop!" The voice cut through the noise like a blade. The crowd went silent. Everyone turned to look at the great doors of the chamber. A woman stood there. She was tall even for her skin was pale blue, almost white like fresh snow. Her silver eyes burned with cold fire. She wore robes of deep purple, the color of nobility, and her presence filled the room like a physical force. Knew, without being told, who she was. Lady of House's mother. No, not mother, he remembered now. Lady was the mother and she had died, so this woman must be, what, an aunt, a grandmother. Lady walked forward, her steps measured and controlled. The crowd parted before her. Even the council members seemed to straighten in their seats as she approached. Behind her, holding tightly to her robe, was the little girl's eyes found immediately. She smiled at him, a bright, happy smile, as if everything was going to be fine now, as if her presence alone could save him. Lady stopped in front of the council. She did not bow. She did not show any sign of respect beyond a slight nod of her head. "I am told," she said, her voice calm but carrying easily through the chamber, "that you plan to execute this human." The elder who had spoken before shifted uncomfortably. "Lady, this creature is an enemy soldier. It is only right that—" "This creature," Lady interrupted, "saved the life of my granddaughter, the last blood of house, the only family I have left in this universe." Silence, complete silence. Understood now. Lady was grandmother, and from the way everyone was looking at her, she was someone very powerful indeed. "My daughter is dead," Lady continued. "My son-in-law is dead. For 3 weeks I believed my granddaughter was also dead. I mourned. I prepared funeral rites. I wept." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Then I learned that she was alive, that a human soldier, one of our enemies, had found her on that frozen moon. He could have killed her. He could have left her to die. Any of your own soldiers would have done the same if they found a human child on a battlefield." She turned to look at. Their eyes met. He saw pain in those silver depths, grief and loss that matched his own. But he also saw something else, something like respect. "He did not kill her," Lady said. "He protected her. He kept her warm. He fed her when he had barely enough food for himself. He nursed her through a fever that nearly took her life. For 3 weeks he was mother and father and guardian to a child of his enemies." She turned back to the council. "And you want to execute him?" The elder raised a hand. Lady, we understand your gratitude, but the law is clear. Enemy soldiers are to be. I invoke the... The words fell like stones into still water. Ripples of shock spread through the crowd. The council members looked at each other with wide eyes. Did not know what meant, but from the reaction it was something important. Though the elder said slowly, is an ancient law. It has not been invoked in 300 years. It is still law, Lady replied. When a life is saved, the Savior is bound to the family of the saved. This human preserved the life of my granddaughter. He belongs to house. He belongs to me. Chaos erupted. Council members shouted. People in the galleries screamed. Some supported the claim, others called it insanity. How could a human be bound to a noble house? It was against nature. It was wrong. But Lady stood calmly through it all, waiting for the noise to die down. Finally, the elder raised his hands for silence. Lady, even if we accept that the applies, it was never meant for enemies. It was never meant for humans. The law does not specify species, Lady said. It says the one who saves a life. It does not say the who saves a life. If our laws only apply when it is convenient, they are not laws at all. Another silence. The council members looked at each other, uncertain. I claim this human, Lady said, her voice ringing through the chamber. I claim him as property of house, under my protection, bound by the ancient right of. Anyone who wishes to harm him must first go through me. She looked at the elder with eyes like frozen stars. And through house. The elder held her gaze for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. The claim is accepted. The human belongs to house. He is not to be harmed. More shouting, more chaos, but it did not matter. The decision was made. Broke free from her grandmother and ran too. She threw her 4 arms around his legs, hugging him tightly. See, she said, looking up at him with those silver eyes full of joy. I told you, you are mine. They cannot hurt what is mine. Looked from the child to Lady, who was watching them with an expression he could not read. Thank you, he said. Lady did not smile. Do not thank me yet, human. You have been saved from death, but your new life may not be any easier. She turned and walked toward the doors. Come, you have much to learn. Followed with still holding his hand. He had come to this world as a prisoner, expecting death. Now he was something else entirely, something that had no word for. A human, claimed by one of their greatest noble houses. His new life was about to begin. Life in house was strange. Was given his own room in the family estate, a beautiful building of white stone surrounded by gardens filled with flowers he had never seen before. His room was larger than any apartment he had ever lived in on earth. The bed was soft. The windows looked out over the violet seas that stretched to the horizon. He was not a prisoner, not exactly. He could walk the halls freely. He could go into the gardens. He could eat at the family table if he chose to. But he was not free either. Guards watched him always, though they kept their distance. He could not leave the estate grounds. He could not contact his people. He was somewhere between a guest and a prisoner, a strange new category that even the did not fully understand. Made everything better. She woke him every morning, bursting into his room with energy that seemed impossible for such a small body. She dragged him to breakfast, to lessons, to the gardens, to every corner of the estate she wanted to show him. This is my mother's garden, she said one morning, leading him through rows of golden flowers. She planted all of these when I was born. She said they would bloom as long as I was alive. Looked at the flowers. They were still blooming, bright and beautiful under the purple sky. They are lovely, he said. Smiled, she loved them, I love them too. Her smile faded a little. I miss her. Knelt down so he was at her level. I know, little one, I know. She leaned against him, her 4 arms wrapping around his neck. But I still have you, and grandmother, so it is not so bad. They stayed like that for a long moment, the human and the child, two unlikely friends in a garden of golden flowers. The servants of house did not know what to make of. Some were afraid of him. They hurried out of rooms when he entered, refused to meet his eyes, whispered behind his back. Others were curious. They watched him from doorways, studying the strange creature that had somehow become part of their household. One young servant, braver than the rest, asked him a question one day in the hallway. "Is it true that humans eat their enemies?" Stared at her for a moment, then laughed. "No, no, we do not eat our enemies. Where did you hear that?" The servant looked embarrassed. It is what we are taught, that humans are monsters who consume the fallen." "We are not monsters," said. "We are just people like you. We have families, children. We laugh and cry and love and grieve. The only difference is the number of arms." The servant studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Perhaps the teachers are wrong about some things." Tutors were less open-minded. They were old, stiff, and formal, who believed strongly in the proper way of doing things. A human sitting in on's lessons was not the proper way. They complained to Lady. They threatened to quit. They said they could not possibly teach a noble child with a monster in the room. Lady listened to their complaints. Then she told them that would continue to attend lessons, and if they did not like it, they were welcome to find employment elsewhere. The tutors stayed. They were not happy about it, but they stayed. And slowly, very slowly, things began to change. Learned history alongside. He learned their language properly, not just through the broken translator in his helmet. He learned about their customs, their holidays, their beliefs about life and death and the universe. In return, he shared human knowledge. He taught mathematics the way he had learned it as a child. He taught her about Earth, its history and geography, and the billions of people who called it home. He sang her songs that his mother had sung to him, old Korean lullabies that made her laugh because the sounds were so different from anything she had heard before. The tutors listened too, though they pretended not to. And bit by bit, their hostility faded into something closer to curiosity. One afternoon, was walking in the garden when he heard a commotion near the main entrance of the estate. A ground vehicle had arrived, and several in fine clothes were stepping out. Other noble families, coming to visit. One of them, a tall male with dark markings on his face, saw and stopped. His silver eyes went wide with shock, then narrow with anger. "So it is true," he said loudly. "House keeps a pet human." Felt his hands curl into fists, but he kept his voice calm. "I am no one's pet." The noble laughed. "It speaks. How amusing. Tell me, creature, what tricks has Lady taught you? Can you fetch, roll over, play dead?" Other were gathering now, watching the confrontation. Saw faces full of disgust, of hatred, of cruel amusement. He was the show, the entertainment, the monster on display. "I served as a sergeant in the Human Defense Force," said, keeping his voice steady. "I fought in 12 battles. I protected my people and my home. I am a soldier, not a pet." The noble stepped closer. He was taller than by almost a foot, looking down at him with contempt. "You are nothing," he said. "You are a curiosity that Lady keeps for her own strange reasons. You have no place here. You never will." Met his gaze without flinching. "I saved a child's life. That is more than enough place for me." For a moment, something flickered in the noble's eyes. Then he laughed again and turned away. "Come," he said to his companions. "Let us not waste more time with animals." They walked past into the estate, leaving him standing alone in the garden. That evening, Lady found him on the terrace overlooking the sea. The violet water stretched out forever, catching the light of the setting sun and the rising moons. It was beautiful, but was not seeing it. His mind was elsewhere, thinking about the noble's words, about his place in this strange world. "You met Lord today," Lady said, coming to stand beside him. "He is not known for his manners." Glanced at her. She was looking out at the sea, her face calm and unreadable. "He was not wrong," said. I do not belong here. I am an enemy in enemy territory, a soldier behind enemy lines. You are no longer a soldier, Lady replied. And we are not enemies, not anymore, not you and I. It was the first time she had said anything like that. Looked at her more carefully, seeing the tiredness in her eyes, the grief that she hid behind her calm face. Why? He asked. Why did you save me? It was not just because of your law. You could have let them execute me and found another way to satisfy the. Lady was silent for a long moment. Then she sighed, and some of the stiffness went out of her posture. My son-in-law was a great commander, she said, but he was also a stubborn fool. He believed all humans were monsters. He told in stories about your cruelty, your savagery, your love of death and destruction. She turned to look at. He was wrong, I know that now. A monster would not have saved a child of his enemies. A savage would not have nursed her through sickness, sung her songs, given her hope when she had none. Her silver eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. You showed my granddaughter that there is goodness even in the enemy. You taught her compassion when the universe gave her only pain. For that, I owe you more than your life. Did not know what to say. He had expected coldness from this woman, tolerance at best. He had not expected gratitude. I just did what was right, he said finally. Anyone would have done the same. Lady shook her head. No, they would not have. That is what makes you different. That is what makes you valuable. She reached out and placed a hand on his arm. It was the first time she had touched him. You are part of house now, she said. Whatever else happens, whatever the other nobles say, that will not change. You have my word. Felt something shift inside him. A wall he had built to protect himself, to keep himself separate from this place and these people, began to crack. Thank you, he said, Lady I. She corrected, we do not stand on ceremony in private. It was the first time she had used his name. He smiled, thank you. She nodded, something like warmth flickered in her eyes. Now come, has been asking for you. She wants to show you something she painted today. I believe it is a picture of you with wings for some reason. Laughed. It felt strange, laughing here on an alien world in the home of his enemies, under a purple sky he had never imagined seeing. But it also felt right. He followed back inside, toward the sound of a child's laughter echoing through the halls. He still did not belong here, not really, but for the first time since the crash on 4, began to think that maybe, just maybe, he could find a place in this strange new world. 2 years passed on Prime. Watched the seasons change, the moons rise and fall, the golden flowers in its garden bloom and fade and bloom again. He watched grow from a scared little girl into a confident young child who laughed easily and loved deeply. He watched himself change too. The war continued, but far away in distant star systems where humans and still fought and died. News of battles reached the estate sometimes. Ships lost, worlds attacked, the death count growing on both sides. Felt each loss like a wound. Those were his people out there, his fellow soldiers, maybe even people he had known, friends he had served with, and he could do nothing to help them. But he could not hate thee anymore. Not after living among them, not after seeing smile every morning, not after talking with late into the night about art and philosophy and the meaning of life, not after the servants started greeting him by name instead of running from him. The enemy had faces now. The enemy had families. The enemy laughed at jokes and cried at funerals and loved their children just like humans did. War was easy when the enemy was faceless. It was much harder when you knew their names. On the morning of the anniversary of his rescue, called him to her study. Sit down, she said, I have news. Sat's face was serious, more serious than usual. His heart began to beat faster. The High Council has announced that peace negotiations will begin next month, she said. Representatives from both sides will meet on a neutral station. They will try to end this war. Felt his breath catch. Peace. After 11 years of war, after billions of deaths, they were finally talking about peace. I have been asked to serve as one of the representatives, continued. My position, my experience, and my unique household have made me a logical choice. She looked at him with those silver eyes. I want you to come with me. The negotiation station was called Haven. It floated in neutral space, a massive structure built by neither side, a place where enemies could meet without fear of ambush. Walked through its corridors beside, dressed in the formal robes of house. Walked on his other side, holding his hand tightly. She was 7 now, old enough to understand what was happening, old enough to be both excited and scared. Officials stared at them as they passed. Whispers followed wherever they went. The human of house, the monster who had become part of a noble family, the impossible thing that challenged everything they believed about their enemies. Then they entered the main negotiation chamber and saw humans for the first time in 2 years. They sat on one side of a great curved table, men and women in military uniforms, diplomats in formal clothes, advisors and translators and guards. They looked tired, all of them. The war had worn them down just as it had worn down the. And among them, standing at the back, was a woman with dark hair and fierce eyes. His sister was alive. She was here. She was wearing the uniform of a lieutenant commander, and she was staring at him with an expression that mixed shock and joy and disbelief. Wanted to run to her. He wanted to grab her and hold her and never let go, but this was a formal occasion. This was the first meeting between enemies trying to become something else. He could not break protocol. So he simply nodded at her, a small movement that said everything. I am alive, I am here, we will talk soon. Nodded back, blinking rapidly, fighting back tears. The negotiations were long and difficult. Both sides had suffered too much, lost too many, to simply forgive and forget. Arguments erupted. Accusations flew. More than once thought the whole thing would collapse. But slowly, painfully, progress was made. The human diplomats wanted to know how a human soldier had ended up as part of a noble house. They demanded an explanation. Some of them did not believe it at first. They thought must be a traitor, a collaborator, someone who had turned against his own people. So told them the truth. He stood before both delegations and told them everything. The crash, the frozen moon, the dying mother and the scared child, the 3 weeks of survival, the rescue, his life in house. He told them about her courage and her kindness. He told them about her wisdom and her fairness. He told them about the servants who had learned to see him as a person, and the tutors who had taught him as they taught a noble child. I was your enemy, he said to the. I killed your soldiers in battle. I fought against your people for 6 years, but I could not kill a child. I could not leave a little girl to die alone in the cold. He turned to the humans. They took me in when they could have executed me. They gave me a home when they could have thrown me in prison. Lady saved my life because I saved her granddaughters. They are not monsters, they are people. Different from us, yes, but still people. He looked at both sides. We have been killing each other for 11 years. We have burned worlds and murdered billions. And for what? Because we are different. Because we are afraid of each other. Stepped forward and took his hand. She stood there beside him, a child holding the hand of a human soldier, looking at both delegations with those silver eyes full of certainty. He is mine, she said, the same words she had spoken on that frozen moon 2 years ago. And I am his. That is what matters, not species, not flags, not war. Love matters, family matters. She pointed at the humans, then at the. You can learn to be family too. You just have to choose. Silence filled the chamber. Then slowly, one of the human diplomats stood, an older woman with gray hair and tired eyes. Out of the mouths of children, she said softly, perhaps we should listen. The treaty of was signed 6 months later. It was named for the frozen moon where it had crashed, where its mother had died, where an enemy soldier had chosen to save a child instead of leaving her to die. That small act of compassion had changed everything. It had proven that peace was possible. At the signing ceremony, stood between two worlds. On one side was, dressed in the finest robes of house, her silver eyes bright with hope. On the other side was, finally reunited with her brother after years of believing he was dead. And in front of him was, now 8 years old, watching the leaders of two civilizations put their names to a document that would end the killing. "Did we do this?" she whispered to him. "Did we help make peace?" Smiled and squeezed her hand. "We started something, other people finished it, but yes, little one, we helped." After the ceremony, grabbed him and hugged him so tightly he thought his ribs would crack. "You idiot," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "You absolute idiot, we thought you were dead. Mom and Dad thought you were dead. I thought you were dead." "I know," said, "I am sorry, I tried to send word, but—" "You were too busy being adopted by alien nobles. I know," pulled back and looked at him. "You look good, different, but good." She looked over at and, who were watching from a respectful distance. "They really care about you," she said. "I can see it." Nodded. "They are my family now, not instead of you, in addition to you." Studied him for a moment, then she smiled. "I always wanted a niece," she said. Later that evening there was a celebration. Humans and mingled together for the first time, sharing food and drink and stories. It was awkward at first. There was suspicion on both sides, old wounds that would take time to heal. But it was a start. Found himself on a balcony overlooking the station's great central garden, watching the two species learn to coexist. Came to stand beside him. "You have done something remarkable," she said. "You have become a bridge between worlds." Shook his head. "I just saved a child, everything else came from that." "That is what makes it remarkable." Looked at him, and for the first time since he had known her she smiled. A real, warm smile that reached her silver eyes. "You did not plan to change history. You simply chose to be kind, and kindness, it seems, can move mountains." Ran up to them, her face bright with excitement. "They have cake," she announced. "Human cake and cake, I tried both. The human cake is too sweet, but I like it." Laughed and picked her up. She was getting too big for this, but neither of them cared. "Of course you like it, you have terrible taste." Stuck out her tongue at him, a gesture she had learned from watching human children at the celebration. "You love me anyway." "Yes," said, "I do." He looked at who was still smiling. He looked at who was laughing with a group of diplomats. He looked at the two species slowly, carefully, learning to see each other as people instead of enemies. It would not be easy. There would be setbacks and failures and moments when the old hatred flared up again. Peace was not a destination. It was a journey that had to be walked every single day. But it had started. And it had started with something as simple as a soldier who could not leave a child to die. Rested her head on his shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what, little one?" "For staying, for being mine, for being here." Held her. "Thank you for claiming me," he said. "Best decision you ever made." She giggled. "I know I am very smart." Below them the garden was filling with people. Humans and talking and laughing and learning. The first steps of a long journey. But every journey begins with a first step. And sometimes, that first step is just choosing to be kind.